So let's go back to our repository and just look at the next one, where we will now go ahead and set up just the line rendering, so no lighting whatsoever. This is just a wireframe for the Utah Teapot, and that's where actually much of the heavy lifting comes in terms of reading in and creating the model, setting everything up in OpenGL for drawing. So this is really the central piece of the whole project. So if we look at that, and we see that we've got a couple of more files. So first thing, let's look at the actual model. So if we look at the README file, I've taken the Utah Teapot from this website here that has a nice couple of nice pieces of information on the Utah Teapot, and also a little bit more on different representations in terms of BZ patches. But we actually already have a broken up patch list in the OFF file format. So let's look at the OFF file format here and look at the actual file. So this is the OFF file that contains the model. It's very straightforward and very simple. So the first line specifies basically a magic marker that if that's not present, then you should consider this an OFF file. The next line then contains three numbers. The first one is the number of vertices in the mesh. The second one is the number of patches that make up the mesh, and this can be arbitrary polygons. In the case of OFF, this particular one only has quadrangles. It has mostly quadrangles, and then a few triangles. And then the 926 is the number of edges in the mesh, which for some applications is important. We're going to ignore the third number, but we're going to use the first two. And then, so the next 480 lines, obviously, then are the X, Y, and Z coordinates of the vertices. So in order to do rendering, of course, we have to create patches so that we can compute normals, and of course, ultimately draw triangles on the screen. So, and then this happens then after 480 lines. So now we're getting to the point right here where we start seeing the definition of the actual mesh that makes up the vertices. So the line 483 here says we have now a first surface patch this is called faces actually. In OpenGL would call that a primitive. Right, but this is a quadrangle. It has 4 points, and it has the points then numbered 324, points 306, 304, and 370. So, and that's really how the mesh is being defined then. This is data that we'll almost directly can then hand off to OpenGL for index drawing, because that's indeed the idea behind index drawing and indexed meshing, that we just have the vertices first and then basically specify each patch in the mesh as a sequence of indexes into the vertex list. So, and one of the things, however, that we immediately see here is, so it's a quadrangle, and OpenGL, of course, when we want to do index drawing, expects us to draw triangles, and this is, since this is a mixed mesh, we'll really have to break up the quadrangles into triangles. And we're going to do this as we read in the model. So after we're done reading in the model, we'll just break up each rectangle here into two corresponding triangles, which is not a hard thing to do. So that's the model description, and there's not much more to the file because again it's fairly straightforward and simplistic.